Welcome back to the second part of today's episode. If you want to check out the part one of this episode, we did an NBA award show. Marcus, again, welcome back on the show. He was a part of that where we went through all of the awards, all the NBA awards, so be sure to check out part one of this episode. But we're back here doing the WNBA mock draft. And there's been a lot of talk about this draft, especially because a lot of girls have been deciding to defer to another year. A lot of news about people entering the transfer portal. So there's we know who number one is. I think it's pretty consensus at this point. But through 2 to 12, there's gonna be a lot of debate there. So it's gonna be really interesting. We're gonna be going through this draft. And I'm gonna be kind of the commissioner here. Jay's gonna get the first pick, Mark's gonna get the second pick, and they're gonna go back and forth until we get through all 12 picks. You got it, gentlemen?
Yes, sir.
All right. Just for formality reasons, Jay, the Dallas Wings with the first overall pick select.
They're going to take Paige Beckers out of UConn. And as we all know, this has been kind of written in the stars for quite some time for a multitude of reasons, right? 3-time Big East Player of the Year, coming out of a program that's produced many talents: Maya Moore, Brianna Stewart, Nafisa Collier, Diana Taurasi. Go down the list, right? UConn is a productivity machine when it comes to pumping out pros for the WNBA. A player who's been able to finish out on a high note with a national championship this year. And it's just going to be coming to a Dallas Wings team next to Arika Gumbawale as a real offensive option in that backcourt. And they revamped their team significantly this past offseason, bringing in most improved player Dejanay Carrington from the Connecticut Sun, bringing in Nalissa Smith, Maisha Hines-Allen, just being able to put themselves in a position to kind of reestablish themselves. Last year was a nasty year for the Dallas Wings in terms of availability for players like Satu Sabali, overall across the board in terms of injury significance across the roster for most of the year. So Dallas is just looking for not just fresh life and obviously another star with the departure of Satu, but they just really, really need a good win, right? Given the fact that last year was not the most fun time as a Dallas Wings fan. So Paige Beckers is not only just the easy selection, but I'm sure Dallas Wings fans everywhere are rejoicing right now that they are in a spot to really start this rebuild or retooling with a really strong prospect.
Yeah, no, we knew she was going number one. And again, just a fantastic tournament to end off a great college career for her. So she is going with the number one pick. We talked about this beforehand. This is where the actual draft starts. Marcus, the second overall pick, the Washington Mystics select.
Seattle Storm, boss.
Seattle Storm.
Sorry. Seattle Storm, my bad.
I think this is interesting. I think what's happening here is I think the Storm have a decision to make. I do think they're going to go with a big here. When you look at the construction of the Seattle Storm roster, you can make a strong argument that they could go guard, or they maybe would have gone guard had Olivia Miles declared. But now I think you have to kind of look further out into the future and figure out what exactly it is that you want. You have Nneka Ogwumike, who is back on a one-year deal. She's not guaranteed to come back beyond that because of the new CBA that should be coming out in 2026. But it's also, aside from that too, she has more years behind her than she's ahead of her, right? And so the thing for me that I'm looking at for the Seattle Storm is the direction that they want to go moving forward, because they have a player by the name of Ezi Magbagor right now who I think is going to have a great year that in 2025. She had a great year last year. She's steadily been improving. I think we're going to see even more improvements from her. Under the tutelage of Nneka Ogwumike. And I think it would be in Seattle's best interest to pick someone who they can, sit under the learning tree of Nneka Ogwumike as a former champion, a former league MVP, an Olympian, and allow her to learn from Nneka. And I think there's two options. I think either you're going Kiki or Yefin out of USC, or you're going Dominique Malonga out of France. And when I look at how Dominique Malonga plays basketball, bro, and I've seen clips galore over the past couple weeks, we're talking about a 19-year-old stretch big who can score on all three.
I've seen the three-pointers. I've seen those threes.
Lethal in the paint, great mid-range, great as a shooter. The post scoring for her is exceptional even right now. She has great footwork at 19 years old. Soft hands as well on the block. She uses her length and her strength to be able to finish over other defenders, right? She has a strong face-up game, right? A'ja Wilson has the best face-up game in the league. I think in 3, 5, 7 years, at some point over the course of Dominique's career, we might be talking about her as well as possibly having the best face-up game in the league at that point. And again, like I mentioned, she is a stretch big, so there's a level of dynamicness, and that's not a word, but there's a dynamic, trait to her that Seattle doesn't currently have. She's also a good passer, has great vision for what I can see. That's just on offense. Then you talk about defense. She's 6'6". She's got a long, she's long, she's lengthy, she's got a great wingspan. She's able to switch. From what I can tell, she can guard the 1 through the 5 pretty effectively as well. And she crashes the boards hard, and her motor, very, very, very high motor. If you're the Seattle Storm, again, you have Ezi Magmagor already, who was in the race for Defensive Player of the Year. You have Nneka Ogwumike, who again might not be there next season, or season after next in 2026. We're talking about a player in Dominic Malonga who, if you pair with Ezi Magmagor, you have your post duo for the next 3, 5, 7 years, maybe, until Ezi Magmagor decides to retire. And on top of that, as another hidden note, Gabby Williams, who also plays for the Seattle Storm,
I was going to
is
mention that. I was
Dominic
going to mention
Malanga's
that.
teammate on the French national team. So you also have a player there who's familiar with her, and so you're already bringing her into a situation where there's a little bit of chemistry there. I think the Seattle Storm are likely going to look at Dominic Malonga and say, we want her to come in at number 2. So at number 2, I think the Seattle Storm are going to select Dominic Malonga out of France.
Yeah, I was going to mention, that was the one thing if you didn't mention it already, that Gabby Williams already, both part of the French national team, like they already have that connection. Malonga was like the youngest. Wasn't she like the youngest player on that team when they came second?
Yes.
I think when she was the youngest player. Yeah, so she was the youngest player. Like she's like shown so much skill already. Glad to see her like getting a high spot, and I think the Seattle Storm is definitely a good long-term play. Jay, any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think the big thing from Malonga is just the overall versatility and moldability for the Seattle Storm is going to be very good for them to be able to look down the line and say that they have a developmental prospect. Marcus mentioned all the measurables, mentioned the motor, mentioned all those things like that. This is a player that's been playing pro since he was 15 years old as well. Being able to adjust to the physicality is not going to be something that's too tough for her. And I think with the understanding of the physicality that's been established throughout the W over the last season and a half shows that it's going to be one of those things where you're going to have some stones to be able to really hang, especially as a post player more specifically. And I think she's going to be going to a perfect team for that. I think from a tutelage standpoint, as Marcus mentioned beforehand, this is a player with a lot of unique ability, and the fact that she is going to be able to go to a team littered with opportunity, I think, to actually not only play right out the gate, but also learn early how to play winning basketball is going to be huge. But again, I think this is going to be one of those picks for the Seattle that, like Marcus said beforehand, is going to establish their front court presence for a long time. And that's one of those things that when you have that opportunity to get that done, you just don't pass up on a possibility for a generational prospect like that, and being able to hold down your franchise in one specific area for so long. They're able to accomplish both of those things with one pick.
That front line defensively is going to be absolutely nasty if they end up going with that pick. Jay, with the 3rd overall pick, now the Washington Mystics go with.
Yeah, so this is a player that I've been really intrigued with for quite some time, and obviously as a Mystics fan, I'm gonna have to go with her early. I know she probably might get taken at 4, but I'm gonna just take her at 3 and get it out the way. I'm gonna take Kiki Iriefin out of USC. Draft stock has been pretty much in this area of being a top 5 to top 6 pick for a long time, even dating back to her time with Stanford, where she was averaging a double-double. She's been relatively consistent throughout her entire career, and transferring to USC to me just kind of put her in a space where she just played in more high leverage games, I think. And this was a year for her more specifically, especially after the short period that we saw with Juju Watkins out, where she was able to step up in real opportunities throughout this season as a leading scorer for USC. A lot of people see Juju Watkins as kind of like the heartbeat of this team in a way where it's almost kind of like Juju or bust, because you see the high points per game and things of that nature. Kiki Iriefin should not be disrespected. It should also be considered more when we talk about this draft class in the BPA conversation, which is why I'm taking her at 3rd as opposed to 4th, because I just think she is that good of a talent. I think the most important thing too is just her versatility. Versatility is going to be a big word we use, I think, throughout this process as well. But more specifically with her, I think that her versatility to be able to like step in with Washington and fill in with that front court that kind of is already slowly establishing itself gives them a real opportunity between everything that they're working through with new management, the new GM, new coaching, everything like that, to just get a prospect that feels like very much sure thing, not just as a offensive player, but especially as a defensive player. And I would not be surprised if this Washington Mystics team takes a defensive approach in terms of the philosophy they try to build on in the early stages of this rebuild they're going through.
Yeah, no, that 100% a good pick. I mean, bad ending for USC. Sorry about that, Marcus. I know that you were pretty devastated with the loss the other day, but She had a great tournament. She had a 36 point game against Mississippi State in the tournament as well. So I think that would be a great pick for the Mystics. And I think like with back to back picks as well, I think she's definitely a good candidate there. You got any thoughts?
No, I think that's good. I mean, I think the difference between 3 and 4 is really not, since the
I
Mystics
mean,
have
they
a
had
lower
back to
pick.
back picks.
So
Yeah, for sure. Yeah,
she'll be a Mystic one way or another. It's just a matter of she's going third or fourth.
100%. So Mystics are still on the board with the fourth overall pick. Who is the second player that they're going to take in this back to back?
So you take a look at the construction of the Washington Mystics roster, right? They have Shakira Austin, who's committed to a healthy season in 2025, and if Unrivaled is any indication, she's on the way to that, right? You have a player in Aaliyah Edwards who I think is going to be primed for a big year too as well. Obviously, especially now, they traded away Ariel Atkins to get the third pick, right? And so they wanted to bolster up that draft capital to bring in some more youth. You have Stephanie Dolson, you have a Brittany Sykes. What this team needs are three things. They need a shooting guard, they need a point guard, and they need a wing player or a post player. They have their post player now with Kiki Uriafin, who I think they are going to take at 3. At number 4, they're going to go get that shooting guard. They're going to get Sonia Citron out of Notre Dame. This is a player who, in her junior season, which was the year that Olivia Miles missed due to injury, she averaged 17 points, just about 6 rebounds, just about 3 assists. She also averaged about 2 steals a game. She was shooting 46% from the field, 36% from 3. This past season, obviously Olivia Miles comes back. Liatu King out of Pittsburgh transfers over to Notre Dame. She's still productive. Had 14, averaged 14, 5 and 3, still averaging 2 steals a game, 48% from the field, 37% from 3. So the shooting numbers went up. She had big game. She had a massive game against NC State towards the end of the season. A really, really, really key game from her in that outing. But you look at a player in Sonia Citron again. She's she plays on both sides. She's a reliable shooter. She can get it on her own, but she's also great with catch and shoot. And defensively, she can guard on the perimeter, which is what you need at this level. She's flexible. She's about my height. She's like 6'1", 6'2", somewhere around there. So if the Mystics want to play small, they could put her at the 3. If they want to play true to size, they could put her at the 2, and that just adds a little bit more versatility depending on what they're looking on, depending upon, the defensive matchups they're facing against or what have you. She's got a great basketball IQ as well, which I think is probably the most underrated thing about her that's not get talked about a lot. Good passer, knows when to take knows when to take the right shots, things of that nature. And again, when you're talking about the Washington Mystics, they're going to draft a guard, they're going to draft a point guard, they're going to draft a shooting guard, and they're going to draft a wing or a forward. Sonia Citron is the best 2 guard in this draft. I would be shocked if the Mystics didn't call her name at 3 or 4. For the sake of the draft tonight, though, we'll say she's going 4.
Yeah, no, good, great pick there as well. So it's good that you get a guard too. Again, you mentioned the versatility, but the fact that she also plays like both sides of the floor. You talk about the 2 steals per game that she averaged just like last year, but also basically just like this year as well. I think like 1.8, 1.9. She also averages almost a block a game for like a guard too. So that's always nice to have as well. Great career, great college career over there. Notre Dame winning. ACC Rookie of the Year and all that. So she's going to be a great pick over there. And I think the Mystics got 2 good picks back to back. Jay, thoughts?
Citron, like Marcus mentioned beforehand, especially for positional value, I think just fits everything that they need, right? Able to rebound relatively well for a guard, able to just play both sides in a real way, and has real, I think, roster flexibility in terms of being able to play up and down the lineup between that 1-2 spot. So that gives them a lot of versatility to be able to do some things. And I think that the main thing for Washington is that they need to be able to step in with blue chip prospects that can come in and produce out the gate. I think this is a Washington team that's not going to try to waste too much time trying to get things right back on track, even with some of the things that they've done. Specifically with the fact that I think they had such a quiet offseason, that goes to tell you that there's something they're trying to work on. A lot of the stuff that made noise for Washington had more to do with their front office and their coaching chair. But in terms of their actual roster, it seems like they have something they're still trying to figure out and build upon. So we don't necessarily know what their philosophy is. But if any indication of last year and a lot of the things that we heard preached around Washington last year is indicative of what things will be this year, positional versatility is going to be a big thing for their roster construction. I think the 2 picks that we were able to get off the board are going to help with that a lot, especially given the fact that they have 2 players right now that I think are, like Marcus mentioned earlier, are due for a big year.
Great picks there for Washington. Now we're going to move on to the 5th overall pick, which is the expansion team pick. This is the pick that the My Temple is going to end up getting in next year's draft. But this is where the Valkyries get their pick. Jay, your choice over here. The Golden State Valkyries with the 5th overall pick select.
Yeah, so I think the Golden State Valkyries, they have to swing for the fences with this one. And I think they also need to go with somebody that I think is a lock to play out the gate and produce out the gate. I'm gonna go with Anissa Morrow out of LSU. Just feels like a very sure thing, right? And I think it's one of those things where they would be more than excited to know that Anissa is able to fall to them at 5. And it kind of just the board is just set in their favor to be able to do this. As a player that averaged nearly 19 points per game and 14 rebounds last year, averaged a double her entire college career, and has played in really big moments as a member of the SEC. She just comes in and provides obviously a defensive infrastructure as a player who's very versatile on that side of the floor, but also is just able to come out and produce offensively out the gate. This is a player that, like, when you look at Golden State, given the fact that, again, one of the bigger things with them being an expansion team is they also had a very quiet offseason in terms of acquisitions of anybody that's truly, truly established. That's one of those things where it puts them in a position now with Anissa Morrow to be their foundational piece this year to get things jump started. And it's a player who could come out and you can feel very confident that not only are they going to be able to produce, but they should be able to produce at a relatively high level. I would not be surprised if Anissa Morrow stepped in as a member of Golden State and had like a Ryan Howard type of year in her rookie season to kind of really set things ablaze and help Golden State have a good start to what their franchise is now going to be setting themselves up for a long-term, place in the WNBA.
Yeah, do great. I like that pickup. She's gonna be able to produce right away. Like 19 and 13 and a half rebounds is like no joke, especially even especially at the college level. So that's a great pick over there to get a nice forward for the Valkyries. Marcus, any thoughts? Or you got to move on to the next pick.
No, we're good there.
All right, so with the number 6 overall pick now, we have the Washington Mystics back on the board. They're gonna be getting this pick, and with the 6th overall pick, they select.
They're going to take Cheyenne Tellers, I think, for a couple reasons, both on and off the court reasons. On the court reasons, again, we're talking about wanting to. I think the Mystics are going to be looking to develop a basketball team that is versatile, right? Switchability defensively. You talk about Sonia Citron. You talk about Brittany Sykes. You talk about an Aaliyah Edwards. You talk about even a Shakira Austin as well. All of those players are players who you can switch around and should be able to hold their own against most positions on the floor, right? They're going to want to continue that with Cheyenne Sellers. Cheyenne Sellers played great her senior season in Maryland. She averaged 14 and 4, shot 46% from the field. More importantly than that, I had the opportunity to have Kareem Copeland, who writes for the Post, who covers the Mystics, covers the Terps, among other players, for the Washington Post, had him on the show about a week or so ago, leading into the Maryland South Carolina game. And one thing that he mentioned is a big component of Cheyenne Sellers' development at Maryland was her defense, how well she played defensively, because when she first got there, had a very stacked roster. And so the only way she was going to get minutes was if she honed in defensively. And she's continued that over the course of her career. Obviously, she's dealing with a little bit of a knee injury. I don't think that should affect her draft stock too much. But if anything, it's actually helped her because now, again, as Kareem shared with us on the show, she's developed a bit more of a post-up game. She's developed a bit more, gotten better at using her size and her body to get to her spots to hit shots. And she does so effectively, right? For the off-the-court reasons, one thing that we talk about with the WNBA is be able to translate the hype from the college season into the WNBA season because, as we all know, Final Four is about a month and a half before, or it's actually a week before the WNBA draft, and about a month and a half before the WNBA season starts, right? One of the reasons why you look at a player in Caitlin Clark and you saw so much gravity towards Indiana is because she's coming off an exceptionally great season, going right into an Indiana Fever season. I expect the same thing from Paige. I think everything we saw Indiana do for Caitlin Clark last season, I think we should expect to see the Dallas Wings do that for Paige Beckers this season. And I think if the Mystics in this new era are as smart as they seem to be, they should do the same for Cheyenne Sellers. Cheyenne Sellers made history, this season at Maryland, her senior season. She's the best player on that team. Maryland had a great year. She was an all Big Ten honoree as well, first team all Big Ten honoree as well. You want to keep any Maryland fan who is interested and a fan of Cheyenne Sellers tapped in with what Cheyenne Sellers is doing. And you not only want to keep them tapped in, you want to keep them home. You want to have them just get on, you want them to hop on the metro and just go a couple, maybe 30 minutes to an hour down the metro line to head over to the Air First Arena, as it's called now, to see Cheyenne Sellers play basketball. The other thing I'll say is this is another key component. Their paths didn't cross the way that Cheyenne Sellers' paths crossed with Angel Reese, but Shakira Austin did spend the first 2 years of her career in college at Maryland. So she's very familiar, is Shakira Austin, with the Brenda Free style of play, and that's where Cheyenne Sellers has spent the last 4 years of her basketball career, playing for Brenda Freeze. And so even though they didn't play with each other, their paths didn't cross at Maryland, they both know what it's like to play for Brenda Freeze. And so you only can assume that there should be some hidden chemistry there as well. I think the Washington Mystics are going into this draft with the understanding that, look, hey, we're entering a new era. We want, Shakira and Aaliyah to be the faces of our franchise. We want Slim and Steph to be around for some veteran leadership. But all in all, we want to infuse this roster with youth. And so I think if the Mystics can finish off the draft of the first round with a Sonia Citron, a Kiki Iriafen, and a Cheyenne Sellers, I think you consider that an A-plus first round for the Washington Mystics, because now you're talking about likely a starting lineup of Brittany Sykes, Sonia Citron, Aaliyah Edwards, Shakira Austin, and Stephanie Dawson, with Cheyenne Sellers coming off the bench. And at some point in time, you would see all four of those young players on the floor at the same time: Cheyenne, Sonia, Aaliyah, and Shakira. I think that's what the Mystics are looking to do. And again, I'm like 95% sure the Mystics are going to draft a point guard. And I think, even though others might not agree that she's the best guard and the best point guard in this draft, not named Paige Beckers for one reason or another, me personally, I think she is. And again, when you tie in the Maryland component of it as well, it's a no-brainer. You want to get those Terps fans down here. The Terps have one of the best fan bases in the country. It's a great program. You want to get those fans packed in Shakira First Arena to see Cheyenne Sellers play basketball. I think they might take that into consideration. Maybe not a lot, but just a little bit. I expect Cheyenne Sellers to be picked 6 by the Washington Mystics.
It only makes sense for that pick. It just lines up completely perfectly, and that would be an excellent first round if they end up getting all three of those prospects. Jay, thoughts, or you want to move on to the next pick?
Marcus cooked. Perfect draft if we able to get all three of these. I will obviously be one of those butts in seats if this is able to be how it lands. I am in a very good space right now when I'm looking at this draft for the Washington Mystics as a team that does need a real philosophical change. And given the fact that everything happened this summer, again, mainly in the front office and in that coaching area, it's going to be interesting. Again, I think Marcus mentioned it just a second ago. The lineup versatility, but also lineup construction is going to be really important this year, because it's going to tell us what their philosophy is, because there is a lot of youth on this team that still is in a developmental stage. And obviously with 3 picks in the first six picks of this draft, it's going to be very important to see what we have early and often. So I'm interested. This is one of the most anticipated Washington Mystics seasons that I plan on being a part of. And this set of 3 picks that we were able to draft in this episode, that'll definitely have fans clamoring to want to watch this team play basketball this year.
All right, Jay, you got the next pick, the never 7th overall pick, the Connecticut Sun. Select.
Yeah, so the Connecticut Sun had a very huge overhaul, but I think one of the biggest things they need to be able to touch on is that guard position, right? Tyesha Harris out, Alyssa Thomas out, Dejanay Carrington out. That is tough pickings. And so I'm going to go with one of the most effective and efficient guards in college basketball. Give me Georgia Moore out of Kentucky. Had a very, very strong season in the SEC. I actually listened to a podcast that she was on speaking about the transition to the SEC as part of Kentucky and just playing, and not only in a different environment, but just playing against different competition. And as one of the most effective players in the country, I think she's in a class with only Caitlin Clark and Sabrina Ionescu when it comes to 2,000 points, 800 assists, something along those lines. This is a player that has been one of the most effective players offensively in Division I basketball over the last 2 seasons in particular, averaging nearly 20 points per game last year, nearly 7 assists. A player that just operates really well in the pick and roll, is able to just create her own shot at a really high level. And this Connecticut Sun team, they're starting from scratch. I mean, literally all 5 starters from last year's team, from the last few seasons team, the foundation of the Connecticut Sun, is out of the mix now. So they're starting from ground zero to an extent. And this is a very strong pick for them because it gives them a different philosophy. When we were talking about the WNBA playoffs last year, one of the biggest things we touched on was the defensive mentality of the Connecticut Sun, spearheaded by Thomas, DeWanna Bonner, Brianna Jones, right? But now there's a different philosophy that can be changed, starting with a player like Georgia, who could come in and give them an offensive spark, where maybe we could see a transition in terms of philosophy leaning more towards high 3-point volume and a team that tries to put more points on the board. I wouldn't be surprised if this is a team that tries to play faster next season. I wouldn't be surprised to see if this is a team that decides that they want to play with a completely different mentality. And most importantly, I think that when you talk about a player like Georgia, I wouldn't be surprised if this is a player who gets a lot of minutes early on because they want to figure out what she's made of. Because Connecticut, if there's one thing that I do think will stick, regardless of who's the roster, toughness is a guaranteed character trait that I think is going to be required to be on this roster. I think she fits the bill, and I think she's a good puzzle piece to fit as one of their first of 2 picks back to back in this area to kind of restart this situation for themselves.
I mean, they've gone through a lot of change this offseason, and if they're gonna like try and like get a change of philosophy, like you mentioned, having someone who's able to like run an offense like Georgia Moore would be a great starting point for them for sure. Marcus, any other thoughts? Or are you gonna move on to your next pick?
No, I think we're good there.
All right, going on to the next pick, we have the Connecticut Sun once again back on the board with the 8th overall pick. Marcus, does Connecticut Sun select?
It's interesting at this point because I think when you look at, and I don't mean this disrespectfully, the Connecticut Sun might have the worst roster in the WNBA. So when you're looking at what they need everything. And if Cheyenne Sellers is off they're going to draft again, as Jalen mentioned too, they're going to draft a point guard with one of these 2 picks. We assume if Cheyenne Sellers is off the board, it could be Georgia Moore. And I like that pick. I think that's a good pick. It becomes a matter of, do they want to go with a forward, maybe a wing player? Or do they want to go with a big, right? I think when you look at some of the bigs that are in this draft, I know the one that comes to mind, namely, is Michaela Timpson out of Florida State. And I love Michaela Timpson. I've become a fan of hers over the past couple weeks. She's not the 8th overall pick in the draft. That's just too high, right? You wouldn't be able to justify drafting her that high, despite how good you think she might be. So I do think they're going to try to go for a wing guard / wing type player, which brings me to Sanaya Rivers out of NC State. She's 6'1". She is great defensively. Her between her size, her instincts, her agility. Again, another player who can guard multiple positions out on the perimeter. She's athletic. She might be. I wouldn't say might be. I think she is the most athletic guard in this year's draft class. You're talking about Paige, you're talking about Cheyenne, Georgia Moore, Haley Van Lith, whose name hasn't come up yet, Tahina Pau, whose name hasn't come up yet. Even her running mate, Isaiah James. I think Sanaya Rivers is probably the most athletic guard in this draft, and that certainly plays to a level of being able to push the pace a bit, which, again, it's hard to kind of get a gauge for what the Sun want to do because it seems like every time you think they're going to do something, they do something completely different. Which this close to the season, you kind of want to have something in mind. So it'll be interesting to see what the team looks like. But I do think that, again, at number 8, they'll probably draft Sanaya Rivers. Again, athletic, good defender. She's a playmaker. She can rebound. There are some areas of improvement, specifically on the offensive side of the ball. She could be a little bit more consistent offensively. But overall, again, I think at this point, you're looking for best player available, and they're going to need a wing. And if Anissa Morrow's off the board, I would say Sanaya Rivers would be a good fit here in Connecticut. But, we'll see. This is the one pick in the first round I'm not really confident in. Them trading Natasha Cloud kind of made this pick a little bit fuzzy. Because it's like, what do you want to do with that pick? They can go a lot of different directions. It'll be interesting to see what they do here. They might take one of those foreign players. Joyce, I believe, is her name, out of France. And there's a guard out of Slovenia whose name I can't remember. I think it's Asia. It's Asia something, I believe, is her name. Asia Sivka, I believe, is her name, is out of Slovenia. So we'll see. But I'm sorry. Just is not from France. She is from Lithuania. My apologies. So maybe they go with one of those 2 players. I don't know. But I were in charge, I would go with Sanaya Rivers because that's the player that I'm most familiar with. But we'll see what they decide to do.
Yeah, I mean, like when you go through so much change like the Connecticut Sun are doing, you kind of have free reign. Like, I mean, obviously, when you go into a draft like this, you want to go with best player available. But especially like when you're like at this point in the draft where you're like, and you have a team like the Sun who basically just like cleaned house, you're like, okay, now we can really just try a lot of things here and like see like what ended up like fitting because like they're probably not going to be like back in playoff contention this year, so they're probably going to be like in a probably like higher position in the draft when we get down to it next season. So it's good to just try out different things going onto the board. Jay, any thoughts?
I mean, I think Sanaya Rivers is a good pick given the circumstances. I think TV, you touched on the idea of them not necessarily coming in with an ideology of competing this year. This is more about trying to figure out what you can do, given the fact that Marcus made the good point of their roster construction being one that's very subpar at the moment, given everything that was overhauled in the offseason. I think the versatility of Sanaya Rivers is going to be really important after going with offense focused with a pick prior when I made my draft pick, going with a little bit more versatility here, not just being able to play multiple positions, but being able to really guard and play make at a high level. It gives them something that they can work with as like more of like a sure thing now, right? I think these are two players who I think are highly established in what they do best, and I think they can operate off of each other in a real way. And there's no real overlap. I wouldn't be surprised if both of these players play early and often. I wouldn't be surprised either if this was unironically we're about to talk about this team in a second, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was kind of similar to what the LA Sparks did last season, where they did not waste any time when it came to letting Rickea Jackson and Cameron Brink kind of just go out and just kind of start things off and figure out what they got going from the beginning. I would not be surprised if these two back-to-back picks got a lot of playing time early and often.
Yeah, I mean, 100% sure. And like you mentioned there, we're gonna actually head over to the Sparks now, who did have the second overall pick, traded it in the Kelsey Plum trade. They ended up getting Kelsey, but now they dropped all the way down to 9. And now it's Jay's pick over here. So with the ninth overall pick, Jay, the LA Sparks select.
Yeah, so the LA Sparks are going to take Tiana Pau Pau out of South Carolina here. I think that this fits mainly given that their trade for Kelsey Plum, they need somebody that can be a significant off guard for them. And Pau Pau just shoots the ball at a high level, almost 5 attempts per game, and has been shooting over 40% for the last 2 seasons. Big time movement shooter, able to just like really play off of other high level players. It's very, 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 very clear coming into this year that Kelsey Plum is going to be their on ball creator at the point guard position. Not only were they able to make a significant trade to put her in that position, but I think the goal is to help her to empower the other two, being Rickea Jackson and obviously Cameron Brink coming off of injury. I think this is going to be one of those things where she can come in, talking about Tahina now, that can come in as a spacer, a real movement shooter, somebody that can come in as a plug and play and just be real support within a backcourt that I think is going to be effective next year offensively. I wouldn't be surprised either if she's a player that comes in and spot minutes off the bench as just a player that they ask to kind of like generate offense at a high level. It's going to be interesting what her role is, but I think regardless of where she steps in, whether she's playing off of a Kelsey Plum or being asked to do more of his offensive threat, leading second units, this is a player who I think in spurt minutes is going to be really effective as an offensive weapon, and that 3-point clip that she has is going to allow her to play very significantly, because being able to space the floor, not just in the NBA but in the WNBA as well, is a very highly rated skill, I guess you should say, in terms of being able to not only generate easy offense but create good looks for your superstar.
Yeah, I mean, if we just look at the year that like the USC won the championship in 2020 and 2024, 5 3-pointers attempt per game, 47%. Like when she's on, she's on, and if she could bring that to a LA Sparks team that already has their point guard in Kelsey Plum, and she could like be like an off ball player for them, that would be absolutely fantastic. Marcus, moving on, or are we gonna do you any thoughts? Or are you gonna move on to the next pick?
Um, I don't know if they'll take Tahina just because Tahina is a little bit smaller. I do think they're going to go guard. I mean, I wouldn't be mad at the pick for Tahina Pau Pau, but I don't know if they would. I don't know if they would take Tahina there. They
For what
might
it's
take
worth, I
Amy
was
Van
gonna go
Lith, but
Sanaya. You took her off the board for me, but I was
no,
gonna
that's
go
fair.
Sanaya. I
That
thought it would have been
yeah,
a little bit more
that's fair.
interesting.
I think they will take a guard. Kelsey Plum's natural position. Um, she can create with the ball in her hands, but I think she probably does a little bit better when she's playing more off the ball. But we'll see. I mean, they brought her there to be the dominant on-ball guard, so that's what makes it interesting. But I mean, if they take Tahina, that wouldn't be a bad pick at all. She'd fit in well, with what they're trying to do over there for sure.
All right, Marcus, you got the next pick. We got the Chicago Sky on the board with the 10th overall pick. They select.
So this one's interesting because anyone um worth their salt in the world of women's basketball will tell you that the Chicago Sky likely need a point guard. However, the Chicago Sky are likely going to be in a position to draft one of these elite point guards that are coming out next year, whether it's Nia Latson, whether it is Olivia Miles, right? some others. They might be able to draft Flau'jae Johnson, not a point guard, but another really good guard. And so I think the Chicago Sky are likely maybe going to be looking more for the wing position because they do have Courtney Vandersloot. They do have Ariel Atkins, who they traded for. Ariel Atkins is not a point guard, but in her last couple seasons in DC, she was asked to do more as a facilitator, and she did do that, and she did it well. And so maybe the Chicago Sky, you know what? I think we're good with the guards for right now. Let's shore up the wing forward position. And so I think this is where we'll see, and again, I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing her name. I think this is where we might see Asia Sivka go at number 10 out of Slovenia. I don't know too much about her. What I do know from what I've seen is, again, people think she's versatile. She's effective on both sides of the ball. You know, I've seen, people go as, they think that she's a great rebounder as well. And she's able to guard multiple positions. Similar to other European talents, she has been playing professional basketball for a little bit longer, right? So she's she's accustomed to the physicality and things of that nature. And again, I wish I could go more in depth there, but I do think, though, after giving it some thought, I think the Sky are actually likely to go wing forward. And I think at that point, from what I can tell, she would probably be the best forward available. So I would expect Asia Sivka to go number 10 to the Chicago Sky.
Yeah, that's definitely a good pick over there. Is she gonna be like a draft and stash player though, or is she gonna come over to the US like right away?
I'm not sure. I have no idea. I don't,
Okay.
like I said, I don't know much about her. I just know that I think the Sky are likely going to lean forward,
Okay.
and they might.
Yeah.
She could be a draft and stash player, but I'm not too familiar with like what her situation is individually, so I don't want to say something that's wrong. I just know that at
Okay.
this point, if they are going to go wing forward, she's, from what I can tell, would probably be the best wing forward available, and so they'd probably take her at 10.
Yeah, I mean, she's freaking 6'4". She's able to to stretch the floor, play hard in the defensive end using that length. I think that could definitely be something. Whether she does play this year or she does play next year, I think that should be a good long term prospect for the Sky. Jay, you gonna move on to the next pick?
Yes, sir.
All right, this is your final pick of the first round, and it is now the Minnesota Lynx, the team that just lost in the WNBA Finals. They're on the board here. Who are you gonna pair with your girl Nafisha? Who are you gonna have over there adding to that roster?
Yeah, so this one's just gonna be kind of quick. My last pick is gonna be somebody that I think has really risen up draft boards over the last couple of weeks, mainly with her performance against Maryland before they went out, and that's Alabama Sarah Ashley Barker. She's been really effective throughout the entirety of the season as a scoring guard, but I think obviously the Maryland game is the one that really has helped her kind of rise up boards as of late as an offensive punch that I think a team like Minnesota could really use. I think the biggest thing for them is that I'm not necessarily sure exactly what they need. In particularly, I think guard is a really good spot given the fact that I believe that the player they had to give up, I'm going to pronounce her name wrong. I believe I'm going to read it again. Cecilia Zondalasini is one of their backup guards that played. Yeah, that played significant minutes for them last year, ended up being picked up in the expansion draft by the Golden State Valkyries. So just being able to get an offensive punch off the bench in Barker is just a solid pick for them. And obviously at 11 with the board falling the way it did, she just seems like a player that's getting a lot of buzz at the moment as an offensive talent. In Minnesota, I think had a pretty established defense as a top 3 scorer. As a top 3 scoring and defensive rating defense last year. So I think just being able to have another creator come off of the bench and give them a pop will be just like a good addition for them. So I think Ashley Barker is just like a good slide in as a off the bench option.
Yeah, no, she did. She definitely put up some good numbers with Alabama this year. Glad that she was able to improve her playmaking every single year, which is really good. And again, a 6 foot guard, they probably not going to get too many minutes on that team, especially if they're trying to go back to the get back to the finals. But someone another option at the guard position would be great for them. Marcus, any thoughts? We're gonna move on to the final pick.
No, no. I think when you look at I said the Mystics. I think when you look at the Lynx, I guess that makes sense. I think the Lynx are kind of going to be looking hopefully to get more out of Alyssa Peely this season, who they drafted last year. A little bit more out of Diamond Miller as well, who they drafted 2 years ago. Diamond Miller had a pretty solid season before it got derailed by injury. So I think they'll be looking to get a little bit more from there. But again, it's going to be tough to gauge where they're looking at because they're bringing back, with an exception of Xanda Lassini, with an exception of Maisha Hines-Allen, I believe they're bringing back just about everyone else. that
It is
played,
everywhere. It is pretty much
that
everywhere
that
for
that
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 team.
contributed to that finals run. So you're really just trying to figure out, is there any, excuse me, do they think that there's anyone that they can pick at 11 who could, potentially provide enough production to help get them over the hump and hopefully, win another championship? I think that's really what you'll be looking at. I'm not going to say that Sarah Ashley Barker isn't that person. I just don't know who that person is. That is, I think, going to be the most interesting pick at number 11, because I think that's the one that has the most questions about what exactly can happen, because you can go a number of different ways there. So I'm definitely be interested to see what happens there. But I wouldn't be opposed to a Sarah Ashley Barker pickup. Like Jay said, I think she'd be good off the bench for them for sure.
Yeah, good pickup there for the Lynx. And now we go to the final pick of the first round. We started with the Dallas Wings. We end with the Dallas Wings. Marcus, with the final pick of the first round, the Dallas Wings select.
Dallas Wings lost Satu Sabali. They also lost Kalani Brown as well, both of whom went to the Phoenix Sun. They have Tierra McCowan still. I think they're going to try to look to replace Kalani Brown with another big down low for Tierra McCowan. She probably won't go here because there's reason to believe that someone else might get picked up here at number 12. But I were in charge of the Dallas Wings, I would select Michaela Timpson here at number 12 for various reasons. The big reason for her is coming into the tournament, there were two players in the country who averaged at least, I want to get the numbers right because I said this a couple weeks on the show, for my show, at least 18 points and 11 rebounds, shooting at least 50% from the field. It was Anissa Morrow and Michaela Timpson, and Michaela Timpson averaged a roughly 5 stocks, steals and blocks a game as well. I think she would be the perfect replacement for Kalani Brown. Jay alluded to earlier how they revamped this roster. You bring in Dejanay Carrington, the most improved player from last season. You bring in her running mate, Ty Harris. You bring in Melissa Smith over from Indiana, who I think is going to have a really good season. Obviously, they're going to draft Paige Beckers at number 1. You still have Arike Agumbawale, who is one of the best scorers in the league. I think you bring in Michaela Timpson, you have a really, really solid foundation there of what I believe is 7 or 8 players I just named off there. Any combination of those players is a playoff team for sure. And so I think they go Michaela Timpson. I think they should go Michaela Timpson because there are things that you would have to worry about with someone else should they pick her at 12 that you wouldn't have to worry about with Michaela Timpson by picking her at 12. So I think they should, and hopefully they do, pick Michaela Timpson with the 12th overall pick.
It's a good kind of a good contrast to what they're going to be getting with Paige and with the first overall pick. Obviously, someone's going to be ball dominant, be able to be the number 1 option eventually for that team, and then going for a defensive beast. I mean, average 3.1 blocks in her final year, over there in Florida State. So getting that big man depth would be great, and I think that would be a great pickup with number 12. Jay, thoughts?
I mean, I think what you both said is really important, but I think the other thing too is coming off of the season Dallas had and the off season they had specifically. Marcus actually highlighted something I actually forgot to mention was the Kalani Brown loss as well. So this is one of those things where you actually not only fill a spot in terms of being able to replace one of your all-star caliber players in Satu Sabali, but you're also now filling a forward depth role in the same draft class, and you do so in a way where you get essentially, in a sense, 2 blue chip not 4. No. I'm going to say, I think 2 for-sure type prospects where you feel like they could come in and produce right out the gate. I think Marcus made a really good point too about Michaela Timpson being a player that you want to grab here because as you let her skid down the board, the opportunity is only going to become more and more difficult for yourself to get a player that might be that much of a sure thing. I think that also what you mentioned, TV, being about the contrast between offense, defense in terms of what you go with Paige in the beginning versus with Timpson later on, I think is a good philosophical draft ideology to come in and give yourself some real versatility across the board, given that this is a team that still, even with what they did this summer with bringing in Dejanay, Lissa, and so on and so forth, they still have a lot of work to do to be able to revamp this roster, given the fact that this is a squad that really fell off the face of the earth last year. And granted, a lot of that had to do with injury and had to do with the fact that Satu Sabali kind of took a little minute to get back from overseas play. But neither here nor there. This is a team that kind of needs to reestablish themselves as a squad that's really in the mix, given the fact that things are looking a little murky. Like I said, I think at the end of the day, I think they had a very good all season in terms of all season acquisitions, and Paige and Michaela would obviously be great additions to that. there's still real questions around Dallas. I'm hoping that two blue chip prospects like these are going to help solve some of those problems a little bit.
Yeah, 100%. But yeah, there goes a mock draft for the first round of the WNBA draft. Let us know, do you agree or disagree with the choices being made? Any this is an open floor for both of you guys. Is there any players that any players that people need to look out for that could potentially be taken in the first round that were mentioned already? Open floor for either
No,
of
but
you
let me
to
say this. Let me say this just real quick. 2024, the Las Vegas Aces with the 24th overall pick, the very last pick in the second round, they selected Liz Kitley, who is a legend.
I read this article of yours. This is
Virginia. Great article. I know I wrote it, but it's a fantastic one. If you haven't read it already,
it's a great article. Yeah, definitely check it out.
I'm telling you this right now, gentlemen. I am going to say some very, very, very nefarious things on Keith Lee's internet if with the 13th pick in this year's draft, we select Haley Van Lith. I just want you to know that now. If in back-to-back drafts, the Las Vegas Aces can get a blue chip big and a blue chip guard to bring on to this team, I'm going to say some very nefarious things on Keith Lee's internet. I want you to know that. Because now what you're telling me is we're going to have Asia Wilson, best player in the world, Chelsea Gray, best point guard in the world. We're going to have Jackie Young, who might be the best two-way defender, at least two-way wing defender on the planet. We also have, of course, Liz Kitley, who I just alluded to. We brought in Dana Evans, brought in Tiffany Mitchell, right? We still have Liz Kitley. Now you're telling me that we can bring in Haley Van Lith, who had an exceptional season this season in TCU, where the only thing wrong with Haley Van Lith is the fact that Jalen Suggs is balding at the ripe age of 26 years old. If Haley Van Lith is a Las Vegas ace, I'm telling you, I'm getting on Keith Lee's internet, and I'm going to say some very nefarious things. I just want y'all to know that because I'm a man of my word and I speak the truth.
I was gonna say, hey,
if it happens,
I mean, like,
I'm gonna say some very nefarious stuff.
The best possible scenario. I mean, like, Haley has been getting a bunch of hype to the point where she could be a first round draft pick. But if she does falling to you guys with the first pick of the second round, oh boy, that would be a very, very, very nice Las Vegas Aces team.
I'm going to say some very nefarious things on the internet.
Jay, anyone else that you want to quickly shout out before we end the pod?
There's three that I think could be pretty interesting. Isaiah James out of NC State, just high level scorer, nearly 21 points per game. Just a very effective scoring guard at the two guard position. Sidonia Prince out of TCU, actually a teammate of Haley Van Lith, that I think has just been one of the more effective bigs in the country. Obviously an older prospect, but somebody that for a certain kind of team could come in and just be an effective backup big, or maybe even start for significant stretches, and just be effective on the offensive end of the floor, but just does a little bit of everything. And then the last one, double machine, it kind of just does a lot of everything at the forward spot as well as Janiah Barker for UCLA. I don't necessarily know
Barker's in the portal.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, so actually I might have to take her out because that was one of the names that I was pretty excited about going into things. I hate that portal because it also leaves that open end for them to be able to put their name in the hat. But now that we're only a couple days away, it's a little too late. But that was somebody I was excited about. So I would just say the two that I know are in the mix are Isaiah James and Sidonia Prince. Sidonia Prince, I think, is somebody that I got hip to more so this year. Hilariously enough, it started with me watching tape for Haley Van Lith in this system. Obviously, we've seen her at Louisville. We've seen her at LSU prior. So, she's been in the mix for quite some time. But it started with me watching tape on Haley Van Lith and then kind of gravitating towards Sidonia Prince at the big spot. So she's just an interesting, I don't want to call her veteran big, obviously, but as an older prospect, I think somebody that can come in and produce really, really early. So maybe that's the one that stands out the most for me.
Yeah, 100%. Great picks, great other players to potentially look out for. It's another great episode, guys. We had to let this marinate. We had to let this simmer. But it was a great WNBA mock draft. Again, the draft is going to be going on April 14th. This part of the episode is being released on April 13th. So you're going to be able to see all this prospects the day before the draft actually happens. And again, thank you, Marcus, for coming on. One of the co-hosts of the Protect Your Queens podcast. If you want to hear all things WNBA, all things like women's college basketball, check out that podcast. I highly recommend. And also just check out any of his articles that he's been putting up, because see that article about the Vegas Aces and that and the prospect that's coming back from injury this year. I'm actually kind of I was kind of like iffy on like the Vegas, like on the Aces like off season as of late, but then like that kind of got me a bit hyped for like what that could potentially come over for the seasons to come. But yeah, Marcus, any other things you want to like shout out for yourself before we end this episode?
No, man, I'm all good, man. We're all good. I appreciate you guys for having me on as always.
Yeah, 100%. And of course, Marcus is going to come back on at some point, maybe during the NBA playoffs. Closer to us, we're definitely going to have him on when the WNBA season does eventually tip off. But yeah, thank you for coming on to the show. Jay, any final thoughts for the guys before we end today's episode?
Yeah, man, fully sprinting into the postseason. As you guys can tell, we out here doing part 2 episodes now. We're trying to put as much content together as humanly possible with the WNBA season coming up around the corner. NBA playoffs obviously is within the next 2 weeks. There's a lot of big time basketball being played, obviously building off of the month of March of the NCAA tournament. It's just a good time to be a basketball fan, obviously, and we're just trying to produce as much content as humanly possible. Stay locked into the social medias. We can't tell you guys this enough. The postseason is where me and TV thrive. The TikToks, the YouTube Shorts, the Instagram Reels, they all thrive the most during the postseason, because you are going to get instant reactions from every single game of every single series until we see the Larry O'Brien trophy lifted up by somebody this season and be named the NBA's 2025 NBA champion. And I am very excited for the fact that not only should we have high-level basketball in the men's league, but the women's league has me extremely hyped, because this will be me and TV's first season really locked in, starting from the draft going all the way through a full regular season and playoffs. So it's just a really exciting time to be a basketball fan, man.
100%. And again, you find all that stuff out. Hit your free throws. TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, podcast networks. All those things can be found in the description down below. Our individual shows. All of Marcus's stuff will be found in the description down below. Again, once again, for coming on. Thank you for coming on to the show. It was a fantastic 2-part episode. I'm telling you guys, when Marcus comes on, we are going to be yapping a lot. So we're going to be talking some good hoops, women's or men's basketball. So again, thank you, Marcus, for coming back on. But yeah, this is the end of today's episode. Thank you guys for watching. Hope you have a fantastic day. Check out the WNBA draft happening tomorrow. Take it easy, guys. Peace.